I'm Anne and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to be discussing my favorite fall reads. Clearly, I am in the mood for fall. I usually fall into 3 moods when it comes to fall. I'm going to pick a total of 15 books. I'm pretty sure actually I have 17 books on this list, but they are all going to fit into very distinct different subcategories, and I'm going to define how I fit them in there so that depending on what reader you are, you will probably find something on this list that is kind of fall themed that you would enjoy reading. So I have divided this video into 3 different parts. The first one is the cozies. These are things that if you don't really love horror, this is the genre that you'll want to read. The second one is what I call classic fall reads. Most of these are classic horror, which for me are not that scary. A lot of classic horror are nothing compared to the horror that comes out nowadays. And then the third is the more modern thriller and horror. So depending on what reader you are, hopefully you will be able to find something here that you will enjoy. The first book that I'm going to pick is Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers, and this fits more into the classic cozy mystery feel. Any mystery by Dorothy L. Sayers or Agatha Christie or maybe Sherlock Holmes would fit into this category just as well. So Gaudy Night tells the tale of Harriet Vane, who is this author. She has had experiences with this brilliant detective, Lord Peter Wimsey, and he is trying to get her to marry him, and she returns to Oxford to find out that there is a mystery and murder, and I will get into the details, but it is a light, fun mystery, but it has that very cozy feel to it. Anything by Agatha Christie or authors like that fits into this category where you just want a nice, cozy, light, classic read. The next one, I'm going to go with middle grade mystery. A lot of these are supernatural or bordering on fantasy, but my favorite one that I am recommending is City of Goats by the Schwab, or I guess Victoria Schwab is her name for her middle grade series. This series follows Cassidy Black, who can see ghosts, and she is able to travel into a different realm. And it's all about her adventures in that realm. It's a little bit creepy, but nothing as scary as like an adult horror would be. Another one within this genre, if you like this, is The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. That's another very good book by Alexander Bracken. If you like the kind of supernatural, mysterious, slightly dark but not really dark, I highly recommend those types of books. The next one I'm going to categorize as cozy historical mysteries. There's so many series like this. My personal favorite is probably the Gaslight series by Victoria Thompson. The first book being Murder on Astor Place. This is a series which follows a midwife and this police detective as they solve murders in New York City around the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century. There are a bunch of series like this that are historical cozy mysteries. Pretty much everything by Rise Bowen. She wrote both the Molly Murphy series and the Heroa Spineless series. Books like that. The next category I would say are the non-fiction cozy reads. For this I chose Wicked Plants, The Weed That Killed Lincoln's Mother and Other Botanical Atrocities by Amy Stewart. This book talks about plants and the history of plants, and it has this very cozy feel. There's quite a few nonfiction books that are very much fall related, whether it has to do with plants or nature or travel or things like that feel very cozy, or DIY type projects. There's a lot of books out there that are like that, and that's one category I really look for in the fall. And the last type of book in the cozy series is what I would call the modern cozies. These are the classic cozy mysteries you think of. The favorite one that I picked for this one is And Dimity Slays the Dragon by Nancy Atherton. This series follows a woman whose aunt died, and it has some supernatural elements, but basically it's a cozy mystery. If you've read one cozy mystery, you pretty much read them all. There's also a series, Knit One, Kill One. I don't remember what that's called. I had mixed feelings about that one, but the mysteries were good. But there's so many cozy mysteries out there, and it really gets you in the mood for fall, especially if it is themed according to like cozy things. There's a bunch of like baked things. There's like a library series they have so many different cozy mystery series, and they all are perfect for the fall season. All right, now we're going to go into the second big category I have, and that is the classic horror, or just classic books in general. The first sub-genre within the classic horror is, of course, the vampire novel. You know which one I'm going to pick, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker, but I'm also going to recommend Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. Carmilla is pretty much the female equivalent story to Dracula's male story, so female vampire versus male vampire. I don't know, there are quite a few like early vampire stories that I would recommend that are very good, but Dracula, I'm sorry, it's always going to be the best. In fact, for a while I tried to read it every year around Halloween because it's Dracula, and there's something about reading Dracula around Halloween, it's just like so. It's like the quintessential Halloween novel. However, I have not been able to read it the last few years just because I've been so busy with reading other books. But maybe this year. The next one I would say is, I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as a Gothic romance, but I would just say it's darker drama. This includes things like Jane Eyre would be a good example. A lot of Charles Dickens, like Bleak House, things like that are kind of very much like that feel where it's Gothic drama. But the one I'm choosing is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte because I read that last year for the first time, and it's such an overhyped book, and I read it thinking it would be a dark romance, and it's really not. It's like a cautionary tale how not to be crazy. And it is such an amazing book with this dark atmosphere. It's not horror, it's focused on the drama between characters, but it has that very dark feel. The next one is another classic horror. I'm not sure how I would categorize it, but I would say it's more focused on human sin and human issues, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Another example of this I would include is Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, where it's more about people's hatred of things that are different from them. So in Frankenstein, most everybody knows Frankenstein's story. This doctor creates this creature who is a good person at heart, but because everyone treats him like a monster, he becomes a monster. Same thing with the Metamorphosis. It's about this guy who turns into a giant bug, and his family completely hates him, shuts him away, and because of that, he eventually dies. Spoilers. I'm sorry. The whole point is that this genre, I feel like, is more of people's evil brings about more evil and destruction and pain in the world. Now we get to the theme of madness. And you know who I'm going to be talking about. It's anything by H.P. Lovecraft. So H.P. Lovecraft mostly writes short stories. He wrote a couple novellas, but for the most part, he's very short stories. And I suppose I would categorize this category as short story horror, classic short story horror. This would be anything by Edgar Allan Poe, anything by Algernon Blackwood. They're nice to read around Halloween because they don't take you days to read, because they can be 20 pages or less and you can get through them in one afternoon in just one sitting, and it's perfect for Halloween if you just have a short time to read something. And the final category I would say is the equivalent to City of Ghosts in the modern era, and I'm talking about classic children's horror / mystery. It's definitely a different genre. And for that one, I picked Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Anything by Ray Bradbury is an amazing book. Everything I've read by him is just great. He also wrote Halloween Tree, which I've heard mixed feelings about it in the bookish community, but I really enjoyed it. Something Wicked This Way Comes follows this creepy circus that comes to town, and something is not as it appears, and two boys have to figure out what is going on to save their town. It's a very intriguing book, but it definitely has that feeling of like adventure, even if there are darker elements too. Goosebumps is the more modern equivalent of this, so where it is straight up horror, but it has that adventure element in it too. Now finally, we're going to modern books. I was going to divide this up into modern thrillers and modern horror, but I realized that I don't have quite enough to fit into both, so we're just going to smush them kind of together and just have 7 in this category. The first one I would say is the mystery thriller plus supernatural. And for that one, I'm going to go with The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. She also wrote Silence for the Dead, which I also enjoyed. So if you were curious to read her books, she writes almost exclusively these types of books. So basically they're mysteries, but they have ghosts. They have more supernatural elements. The Sundown Motel follows this woman who is trying to solve what happened to her aunt decades ago, who was a night clerk at the Sundown Motel. And so it's told in 2 perspectives, the aunt and the niece. It's a fun book. I have heard criticisms that the supernatural elements don't work perfectly with the mystery because the supernatural elements are just there and they don't really assist or build on the mystery, and I can see that criticism, but I really love this book. The next one is, I would say, dark historical thriller. It's not a mystery. It's not a cozy. It's something much darker. The main example I found of this that seemed to work perfectly for me was The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This follows this woman who's an author who goes to visit this very old author, and she wants to tell her real story of her very interesting family and this massive fire that burned down her house when she was a young teenager. The Little Stranger is an equivalent to this one, but I didn't enjoy The Little Stranger quite as much. But these types of books are very common, where they're historical thrillers, I would say, but they lean heavily on the creepiness of the atmosphere of wherever the book is set. In this case, it is in English manor house, which to me feels the most haunting when it comes to settings. I don't know, English manor houses are just amazing. The next one is true crime. I don't read a whole lot of true crime, but I do enjoy it. I wouldn't categorize this as thriller / horror, but I wasn't sure where to put this book, so it's gonna go in here. For that genre, I picked The Five by Haley Rubinhold. So this book is a nonfiction telling the background and lives of Jack the Ripper's 5 victims. There's not much to say about the book besides that, but it was just perfect how it has this creepy atmosphere of the Jack the Ripper story, but it's nonfiction. True crime is another genre that is perfect for fall. The next one is actually one I wanted to put in because it's so unique in the, I guess, Halloween reads, and that is manga horror. The one that I feel is quintessential and like perfect when I read it is Kitaro by Shiguri Mizuki. It's about this one-eye monster boy. His hair is an antenna that can contact and communicate with ghosts, and he travels around Japan and he solves mysteries and runs into ghosts and demons and things like that, spirits, and it is a very unique manga. Another example of this might be Death Note, even though I wouldn't say that's exactly Japanese horror, but it definitely goes into that realm a little bit. The next category I would say is the straight up thriller, but it borders on horror. For that example, I'm giving The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. A lot of people know this series. It follows this woman who is going to question this one serial killer who is in prison to help figure out how to catch this other serial killer who is snatching and killing women. And of course, the serial killer she goes to visit is none other than Hannibal Lecter, the cannibal psychologist doctor. He's absolutely brilliant. And even though I would say this is technically a mystery, it's more of a thriller, and it's pretty horrible too. So I would definitely say this book borders on horror just as much as it is thriller, but it's a really great book and I love it. Now we have, I would say, the classic modern horror. For that, you know, I gotta give a classic. I gotta mention King at least once in this list, and for that one I'm picking out The Shining by Stephen King. So I read this recently and it's such a good book. I would say with horror like King writes. Even though he does go kind of graphic and horrific, he does focus more on the psychological horror, which is really interesting, but he doesn't go so far for it to be a slasher, lots of blood and gore and things like that. I would say Stephen King focuses more on getting to know the characters and building up to that psychological break, especially with The Shining. If you didn't know, The Shining follows Jack Torrance, who with his family goes to stay over the winter at this grand hotel that is closed for the winter, and of course madness ensues. I would say it's kind of the quintessential modern horror novel that so many other horror authors have tried to emulate. So the last one I would say is all out gross. That's the best way I can describe this genre. These are the books that are disgusting, maybe because of the content matter, just the taboo subjects that are covered in the book. In this one, it is literally disgusting, and that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. This book follows a group of Boy Scouts that go on this island, and there is this worm infestation, and it is disgusting. But it also relies on a little bit of that psychological horror. But these are the books that are more straight up just like disgusting and horrible. And it's not as much build up and slowness as Stephen King writes. It's more just like in your face, horrifying. I think I got together a good variety of books so that any type of reader can look at this list and say, hey, that's a similar book to something that I would read in the fall. And I hope you got some new ideas for books to add to your fall TBR. Have you read any of these books, and what are your favorite fall classics, and what types of genres do you look for during the fall time? Do you focus more on horror, or do you like more of like the cozies, light stuff, or do you focus more on fantasy, or is there something totally different that you focus on, like you love reading only romance in the fall for some reason? I want to know all your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like, subscribe. I post every Saturday at 6 p.m. and I will see you all in the next video. Have a great, lovely fall. Bye.